that on point right now because I got
I'm not particularly on point, so this is going to be
the main thing that's
teaching
streaming
video.
live right now is my nose. So, yeah. Okay. I think the key thing holding us back is having not being able to pull in the HAL repo from, a single command inside the platform.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been trying to get that going, but I'm just a little bit disturbed that I kind of keep having to write sort of bundling things to make the isolate functions need less understanding from the bot. So it's a form of like prompting by way of making the function call do exactly what I want the bot to choose, which means I now am wrapping isolate code, which is a slightly different way of prompting because it's still prompting by making the names of things be nice, but it just feels a little bit not the right thing to do. But fuck, I don't know. So
Got an example? So
yeah, sure. That's a very good question. So a good example is the synth isolate, where it has, for example, the test function. And the test function, oh goddamn, I clicked the wrong button. The test function is really like a bit of a wrapper, because you could, it's being asked to call with the agent, the prompt, the assessor bot, and the list of expectations. Fine. But when you run it, it's sort of just wrapping and combining a bunch of other things. Like I could have scripted the bot to do all those steps, but it just seemed easier or more precise to make the isolate that gave it the exact instruction. Maybe I'm just being a purist about it. And maybe it just means that the isolate functions aren't as direct as they need to be, and maybe the situation will stabilize where we don't need new isolates all the time. But yeah, that's an example. Yeah.
okay.
The testing format, as far as I got with that today, was I felt like I made a lot of good progress on it. Like, for example, this was me making the thing that was supposed to update HAL from GitHub, to do that update that we were talking about yesterday. And so I realized that, there's no point putting test at the start of a heading. You might as well just have a heading. And then, if it's a heading, that's
boring pretty fast.
Yeah, a lot of things got boring pretty fast. Even writing prompts got boring pretty fast, but it sort of lost a bit of meaning if you just had these markdown blocks. So I just started making and writing the test that I wanted to see. Really? That's about as simple as it got, and it felt sort of quite descriptive. I came up with this idea for the before thing. So if there's a setup for a particular test, I realized that all setup is really just a test anyway. So the
Mm-hmm.
setup is just another test that runs some prompts and then has some expectations. And that all we do here is just make sure that that test runs first, and then we don't clear the system state, and then proceed with running this test after.
Yep. Yep.
I got a little concerned about chains of prompts versus single prompts, so I'm not sure how
I've
we
been
want to
looking at that.
script that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been looking at. Okay.
But I know it's as simple as just there's a list of these, like you just go um,
Do
you
this,
just
that,
go like
flags.
that, but
Yeah,
you
yeah.
just need to name it something like chains.
Yeah, I've been. I don't know if you want to bring up that diagram or just WhatsApp you, um, or just you have to watch Tempest here. Um,
I've got a technique. It's called looking at the sky while it
of
loads.
course, of course.
Excuse my face.
Right bit, right bit, down a bit. Click, click, click. Yep. You got it. Okay,
Okay.
so this is my thinking at the moment. So that initial state, just to get me off the ground, I'm setting up the CRM bot, and then I've got a population bot, or just populates with the data. It's like create 30 customers, blah, 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 5 drivers, etc. to go to the test data. So that's dead easy.
Right. So that
Um,
generation, in the sketch I was doing over here, that generation would just be a particular
yeah,
chain of
you don't.
prompt or prompt.
Yes, well, it's a single prompt. So, for example, where's my latest one? Um, it's actually dead easy to do. So you set up your CRM, and then say something like right, list all the entities. That's the first one I did, and then create things like using creativity, but staying within the ERD rules. List create data for 30 customers, each of which have to have pickups, create drivers, create admins, etc. And just runs through it and creates it. So it's a single prompt. It's only about, well, it's actually one sentence. As long as
Yeah.
you don't mind what the
Well,
data is, it just runs through it.
that's what I started doing here. Like this should have been two prompts, but I really just scrunched it into one. It was just like, you know, it's multiple instructions compacted
Yeah,
into one.
yeah, yeah. But it's easy enough to generate random test data of an arbitrary size.
It's almost beautiful, like so easy to make random
Yeah,
test data.
yeah. And because we're running it on the CRM itself, we know that data is self-coherent. Um, so, yeah, it's all good. Okay, so generating the test data is easy enough. So to go back to that diagram, it was like, okay, so how do we get a complete set of tests? So if you go on the left-hand side, this is the route I'm going down at the moment. So you give it the ERD, and you go, okay, list me all the entities, and then split them into what's calling as stores and actors. So a store would be, for example, customer record. An actor would be a customer agent, for example, and it does that quite well. And then for each actor, given the permissions and the ERD, give
Don't you
me a
mean
list of.
actors instead of stores? You mean, sorry, agents?
Well, I'm using actors at the moment. Not agents because
No,
these
but
are
an
just.
actor, isn't an actor a person?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
And a
So
store, but a store is an agent? Like a bot? or
No,
no?
a store is like a manifest um, or a sector. So it's a store of data, but it doesn't do anything.
Okay, so it's like an entity.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but you don't make a one-to-one mapping between agents and stores. Like the collection of all customers doesn't have an agent associated with it necessarily.
No, it doesn't. A large number of customer data stores would be acted on by the customer agent actor.
But that okay.
Does that make sense?
Um, I understand. I'm not sure. There's several ways we could go about that. I don't want to derail what you're trying to show me here
Yeah.
with that discussion.
Yeah, there may well be better ones, but so you see where I'm trying to get to as we go through this. So for each actor, now you've got a prompt vector. So, for example, say an actor would be customer agent. So list all the valid actions that the ERD allows a customer agent to do. Okay, so now you've got a list of actions. So this is like create customer, read customer details, etc. So then for each valid action, you generate a test. So now we've got tests of the prototype we've got, which is like a description, prompt, and expected output. But at this point, it doesn't have any specific data, so the expectations are a bit woolly. So, for example, it's like create a customer. Description is create a customer, make sure that the customer is created. The prompt would be create a customer, and the expectation is customer is created. So it's still a bit woolly at this point. The next step, and this is an interesting one for completeness. So it's just doing that, and it's like, well, there's things that could go wrong here. So then I list all the interactions between actors. So customer agent can ask for permission from a duty manager because customers ask for something that the customer agent doesn't have permission for, needs to talk to the duty manager and get back a response, and then talk to the customer. Now, because we've got individual tests, each actor has its actions that it can carry out. That's just chaining of tests. I'm calling this a test batch. So it's like look for each interaction between actors, just one level at this point, and generates the test
Right, based
batches.
on the theory that if you got all of the individual actions tested thoroughly, then when you clip them all together to be a compound group of actions, then the chances of it all working smoothly is very high.
Exactly. Now, the interesting thing is number 7, check if any test batch can't be generated. So if there's a test batch that the ERD implies, and you can't do it only using the tests, then you miss a test.
How would you know
There's
that?
been a couple tests that popped up, actually. It's like,
Do you have an example
um, from
off the
memory,
top of your head? Yeah.
it was top of my head. It was that one where customer asked to skip the next route or the next pickup. Customer agent doesn't have permissions. Can talk directly to the customer. Can talk directly to the duty manager, but actually it's the round trip of the customer through the duty manager, through the customer agent, back to the customer is the important thing. And that picked up because it was implied by the ERD but not explicit. That picked up the tests. The customer agent must be able to, with permission of the duty manager, cancel the next run for a customer.
And why was that test unable to be generated?
Probably because just listing the base tests. There weren't many of these, but there were one or two.
So
Generating the
because
base tests from the ERD.
because you were only listing individual actions and not chains of actions, that particular activity required a chain of actions to do, and therefore it was missed from the test. Okay, so doesn't that indicate then that we have been failing to model the customer as a first class actor?
Well, it
and
does
and it,
imply that actually, um,
we should
what
really be
what we
making.
should do is updating the ERD with that one, right?
Yeah, because it just dawned on me now that all of the business systems I've ever worked on were always one, sometimes two steps removed from the actual customer. But really, that's the only actor you really care about. And so, if you
Yeah.
model the things that the customer wants, like impatient, wants to save money, wants to not be on the phone, wants to this and that, and then that actor was generating not see, we were talking about end-to-end tests from the point of view of the humans in the admin office, but what we really want is
Oh,
an
I see.
end-to-end test
These are
from the
like
point of view of
scenarios. These are like
what?
scenarios, aren't they? These are like scenarios.
Well, yeah, but the customer driven interactions, because actually, who gives a fluff how the manager experienced the system? What we really care about is how the customer experienced the whole thing,
Yeah, that's interesting actually because
right? That's a very
yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
That
because
seems
you can add lots of chaos into that. Customer only has 30 seconds and barks out a command, cancel
that
my
is
thing.
the source of chaos, and
Yeah.
I imagine it's very similar from app to app. Like, you know, getting portaloos collected or gas collected is the same attitude.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I want that. Yeah, I'm
more
just
importantly,
I would christen that scenarios because that sounds quite
where we want
or
to go
stories.
long term is to be able to model a customer in a cross-cutting in a model the customer cross-cutting businesses. So we want to have a model of the customer that goes beyond just this company. We want to model the customer needs gas deliveries, grocery deliveries. The customer needs schooling, parcel delivery. Like, that's the unified model of the customer, and these companies are just plugging into that well. And what we really want to facilitate is, okay, well, what services is the customer missing that we could help another company provide using the same chat-based interface that we've built here.
Oh yeah, I mean the an example straight off the top of my head is travel, right? I need to get from my home to a hotel in Kiev. There's a number of different companies involved in that, a number of different bookings and so
Yeah,
on. I'd prefer just to say I will need to get from here to
right.
here, and here's my constraints.
But I think when we develop the ERDs, we should reassess how we do that, because they should be customer centric, not um, administrator centric, not staff centric.
So, um,
Because that highlights a major flaw in the way we've approached it. If you can't get a test for a customer wanting to cancel a collection because it was too many steps through the system, that's a flaw. That's a fault.
it is, but it was not the ERD's fault. It was the extent of the testing, because the
Well, no, it's the attitude that we have that's at fault, because we
well,
had
I guess what you do then is we've got business rules which generates the ERD for the internal structure of the system that
hmm,
is the business. What we don't have are a similar set of customer rules from their point of view.
yeah, but that should be the first thing. That should be the highest thing in the hierarchy, because the business dies if the customer's rules are not being
Yeah,
met.
that's quite good. So if we created a whole bunch of customer rules saying, I don't want to have more than two steps to get what I want done.
Right, right.
The customer rule.
Mm,
You can create any one of those. I always want to talk to the same person.
yeah.
I don't know how many more of those, but that sort of thing. Um, then that those would probably be largely unchanged from similar business to similar business.
Yeah, in fact, they would be exactly the same, and we can reuse the model, and then that gives us this incredible power to make a model from a multi-business view, like from the view of the customer, looking at all these different companies, we can say, hey, customer, we've modeled you and we've modeled your interaction with these businesses. Do you want to help out here? This
Yeah.
this
I suspect that sounds like specific customer tests at the moment wouldn't be picked up from the ERD,
yeah.
but a bunch of customer tests that you can apply um, as tests of the ERD. And if the ERD fails, it's the ERD that needs to change.
Mm. And then you
Um,
get rules like I don't want to have to enter my details in twice between my
right.
rubbish pickup and my
Yeah.
whatever else I'm doing. Right? I only want to enter my details once. Perfect.
Those sound like tests that uh, try to break the ERD.
Shouldn't
Because
they be the definition of the ERD? Like
well,
ERDs.
how would you start with a bunch of rules that are perfectly reasonable customer expectations? Like, I don't want to have to talk to the same person, different people every time I call.
Right.
I don't want to put my details in twice. That doesn't actually inform you whether you're talking to an airline or a pickup service. You could make them more complex, I guess.
Well,
You
just
could
more
make them
specific,
specific.
right? Because the customer rules are like when I get my rubbish collected, I we kind of want to encode customer preference and patterns, and then we build the ERD to meet what we can of that. Because ideally, the customer wants the service for free, never wants to think about it,
Right.
like
Yeah.
and all that. And we're like, well, we can't give you that, but here's our next
Yeah.
best effort.
I'll have a play with that. Maybe the thing to do is when we're building using the creative bot, the ERD, you start with the customer rules and say these have priority over everything else. And here are the business rules. I- Um,
Well, the
uh,
customer rules don't have priority. They just influence the score that their business gets from running 1,000 customers in simulated mode, because it's the rules of how the customer behaves, and then the business ERD has to be a separate thing that handles the assault.
yes, I mean the ERD is the machine.
Mm.
The customer is the experience of the machine. Now, if the machine is giving a poor experience, then it's a bad machine.
Bad machine. Yeah.
And so it needs to change. But the customer experience itself, I don't think I wouldn't shoehorn. For example, the customer is never going to say, "Well, we could make it all customer rules in that a customer always wants to make sure that if they have been undercharged, they get an invoice to charge them more money from the accountant." But then we're kind of just we're mushing the machine with the customer in that one. It's like maybe the customer doesn't want that. Maybe the customer wants to get away with being undercharged, but the business doesn't want to undercharge.
Yeah, it's the business that doesn't want to undercharge.
Yeah, but that undercharging thing is still a reasonable business rule.
That's a business rule, not a customer rule.
Yeah, so I think the two are separate, but
They're
making sure
definitely
that
separate. Well, they're separate systems. They're two separate systems, and they're adversarial in nature
mhm.
almost. But the customers is how we generate the load to the put into the CRM, because you can be like, customer has a fault, initiates a phone call, right? And then you just turn the phone call into text, and then now you're modeling the customer agent person, and then they're putting things into the CRM.
Yeah, I think the way to do this is explicitly generate a bunch of customer expectations, and from those expectations generate rules, which taking the entire ERD as a black box, you shove the test in, and then the expectation of the customer is it met or not.
Right. Yeah, because that's
Yeah,
really a better score. Is the customer need met by the system as opposed to is the current staff manager feeling good about this system?
it is. But I like what you said about this somewhat adversarial, but it's not always adversarial. But it's a good way of thinking about it. In that,
They are independent. Independent.
they're independent because, for example, um, if the business ERD was entirely based on what the customer expectations were, and the customer wants everything for free now,
Mm.
and business can't afford to do everything for free now.
No, but see, this is
So,
where you
although,
start to get more advanced functions, like saying, okay, here's our demographics, right? And we've managed to study the customer base. We've said, well, X number of people are late paying. We have this much delinquency rate. So you can say a lot of demographics about your customer base, and so you could model how might they respond to a prize draw or a raffle. How might
mhm,
they respond to a sign up your neighbor, get a free collection? How can you simulate the behavior of your customer group in response to things that you do and in response to things that the environment does? Like, if interest rates go up 0.5%, tell me how that affects my rubbish collection business. Should I be, you know, um,
mhm.
expanding and getting more trucks in the current climate?
This sounds a lot like black box testing. So, in testing a computer game, generally speaking, you would put a human in front of it. And what I used to do is record them on VHS and their voice and get them to give a running commentary as they're doing it.
Yeah,
And they're going, oh, that was shit. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, yeah. That's good. That's good. And there's a lot of rich data from that. Now, we can simulate that by creating personas
yeah,
and black box testing the entire business. And it's like, okay, so today this scenario is I need this done now. You're overcharging. I found another company that's doing something better, cheaper. What's the customer agent going to do?
right. Because you really also want to have business intelligence where you're scraping the web pages of your competitors to
Yeah.
know, and you're putting those options into the customer's model and saying, well, they can choose between this guy and this service. Why are they choosing this service? And are we losing our edge? And like
Yeah.
you can do some, instead of just customer attrition, you'd be trying to measure who's close to the door or who's about to.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
this is probably
Exactly.
more the stuff I'm interested in, is like, how do we model every person in that town, and how do we model their consumption of every service around them so that we
I
can
think
either be that service.
I think it's a matter of I do think it's a matter of black box testing. So uh, for every person in this town, you look at the demographics, age, location, wages, all that kind of thing. Generate as many personas as you want. Get each persona to generate scenarios, and then hit it as a black box, and then you see when your business fails. It's like,
Right. And then you
too many
just,
phone calls. Oh, you've lost me. Hang
yeah,
on, I'm off. Sort of
wait
thing.
time on the call too long.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, it's funny, right? Like, you could
Black
actually,
box testing.
and then you just run that scenario like 100 times and be like, well, our confidence interval is X, but the simulation always shows that this is the future of the business, and so therefore you
Yeah,
should make these changes, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you should hire more telephone answerers, which is one of my personal bugbears. Your call is important to us. It's not that important, is it?
Not
Otherwise,
that
you're hiring more
important.
staff to pick up the fucking phone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but then they'd push it back at you and be like, well, it's not important to you because you chose us based on price, so we can't afford the customer person you wanted.
yeah. Worst
Yeah,
case, the possible thing would be for certain customers phoning up from their home line, you've chosen a fast track telephone service because you don't care if it's slightly faster. You just want to have them deal with it in 10 minutes and not 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I'll think about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
It's interesting.
the other issue I struck was being able to have the expectations be smart. Like instead of just being like, did this happen? It could be like, read the customer ID of the last customer to be added, and then like the test might need a bit of the expectation might need a bit of uh
Yeah, I
coercion.
was thinking. I was thinking about that. I was thinking about initial states, or suggesting to add an initial state into each test. So we got description,
Well, initial
prompt,
state was just the before
expectations.
block. Like if
Um,
you generate a way to get the environment, get the system state into a certain place, verify that it's in that place, then proceed with the test. That's just the before block.
yeah, but the thing is, how do you verify? Well, okay, so there's a bit of a bootstrapping.
You
This
verify
is
with
actually a
the
separate thing.
expectations.
Yeah, you're going to use the ERD to get the data in,
Yeah.
but you're testing the ERD.
Well, that would need to be built up with little pieces at a time. Um,
Yeah, there's
you
a bit
know,
of like a chicken and egg thing going on there in terms of generating uh, the actual output to generate a quantitative expectation. So,
you can always
um,
test the components of the ERD first, and then at some point you're going to need to look at the ERD and be like, yeah, that's good enough, and then you move on with the
yeah,
testing, the next layer of testing, which is testing the ERD once it's considered good.
yeah. Well, I was thinking almost. Remember a few days ago, I was talking about there's the coherence test, and then there's these tests that we're running, the kind of iterative prompt-based tests. But the coherence test, I think, needs to be run by a different bot than the ERD. Um, and I've not looked at exactly what that looks like, but it makes sense that you're not using the ERD to generate its own test data. So, say if you use the ERD to add 10 customers, but it always does one less and then reports one more for some reason. The
Yeah,
next day,
you can't give it the ability to self test. You need to
yeah,
test it externally, definitely.
yeah,
So
yeah.
another
So
way that you can get around requiring the expectations to do some logic is that you can make the logic be a part of the test, and so the end state, you can do all the computation like by writing an extra file or summarize or count the number of customers that start with J, and then that means that your expectations can be just pure observations rather than needing to call on any intelligence because you did the intelligence during the test run.
yeah, yeah, and I think there's going to be something around that. So um, again, that raw intelligence needs to be a different bot that is much simpler.
Yeah, always,
That runs on
always,
assertions, which is
always.
like there are now 10 customers and put it in this format. That easy, and then you go back to the test and say how many customers do we have over time. But you run the response through the ERD, but you inject the test material with this, you know, brute force kind of injection. But yeah, other than that, yeah, the just as we're coming on there, the thing I was working through is trying to get the expectations specific enough. Because if they're too woolly, there's kind of false positives and false negatives. So it's like create a customer. Right, I've just created a customer. It's like check that the customer is there, and it's like quite woolly, you know. So there needs to be some kind of link where The prompt is create a customer called John Smith. The expectation is that there's a customer called John Smith, and in order to prove that, return the record of a customer called John Smith and double check it, maybe double check it by the ID. So something like that. But I do think there needs to be some kind of injection that is smarter and away from the ERD in order to make the prompt a coherent one. That makes sense.
I'm not quite 100% sure on what you mean.
For example, the setup could be right. Inject John Smith with a customer ID of 14. The prompt doesn't know its customer ID, and just say, what's the customer ID of John Smith?
Right.
And you expect 14 back, but you've not told the prompt. So the session that you're testing doesn't know that the ID is 14 until it actually looks it up. Because otherwise, you put it in the description if you're saying...
Yeah, like if it comes out in context, then that's a bit of a fail.
Yeah.
But what you could do there is you could use that before hook to populate the ERD and then run the test. The test will run on a blank session, so the context for the test will be blank, and it could only have retrieved the
yeah.
You know,
and I looked at that, and actually that was working quite well. I was doing it by hand, where I would say something like create John Smith. Here's his details in a separate tab, and then I would get it to create the prompt and then run it, but with the output from that separate tab. So they only had the information that was provided in the prompt to go with. What's John Smith's ID? You've not told it in anything on the test run that the ID is 14 until we go, to the expectation saying, look for 14 in the output. So I do think there needs to be some kind of intelligence inside of each test call in order to make sure we're isolating, and we'll make sure we're not cross-polling when running these things.
You mean intelligence in how you ask the question to make sure that the test is genuine? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and you're not leaking information into it.
Yeah, by giving it the answer in the question.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's probably something you'll need to put into the bot that helps you write the tests, where it looks for fallacies like that.
Yeah.
And you might
running it on a blank instance, a spin up instance.
It's always blank. The session is always blank each time. For each individual test that gets run, the session is always blank. That's the policy I've adopted.
Yeah. I'm cool with that.
In addition, the assessor tool that you will need to prompt further might benefit from being told how to look at the session and determine if there was any leakage of data. So if the expectations were, if the behavior of the system was drawing on information from the context as opposed to drawing on it from the storage records, then your assessor should sort of throw that out as a bad smell and tell the human, like, hey, you wrote this test, but what's happened is that the information you're testing against has ended up in the context window of the bot, so that gives it a very high likelihood of giving the right answer every time, whereas in a real-world usage, that context might not be there, so you should alter your test in this way, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, exactly. And you can test that quite easily by, saying, John Smith bananas instead of a number, and it comes back with a number, or vice versa. It's like, well,
oh yeah, so I guess you could even do better than that. You could test that type of thing within the prompt generation, because you should try to generate negations as well. Like if you do the opposite of a given prompt, should all the expectations fail? Like
Mm.
as part of the variance generation,
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's a
you
good point.
should
Yeah,
you should be proving the negative as well.
yeah,
So that you like if the expectation comes out true when you're trying to make a negative variation as well as a positive one, then the test is flawed.
yeah, 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 exactly. Well, that's good actually, because you could easily generate a negative for every test.
Yeah. So this is what I did. This was the test file I made for I've got some test fixtures that I run to make sure that the isolate system is working. They're just
Mm-hmm.
basically pure test functions. And so I've made this test markdown doc that uses that fixture to exercise both the fixture and the testing framework.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's worked really good. And so what I'm building up is using this fixture to figure out the finer details of things like like what is the file format of the output of the runs, because I need to be able to do multiple files. I need to be able to do just one test within one file. I need to be able to run multiple variances. I need to consider a file format that's easy to update. Like it needs to be almost like an array, and then I make a function that could push an object onto the end of the array without loading the huge file up into context. Because if you generate 1,000 variations, I can't have that run through context. I need to actually make a clever way of interacting with the file system that it just tacks it on the end as well as
Yeah,
generates a summary at the same time.
yeah.
So those are all quite fun things. Um, yeah, that's what I'm doing,
Okay,
and it's a
cool.
lot of fun, and it feels like the future, but it's awfully slow, but not in the way that I'm used to things being slow. Typically, I'm used to it being slow because I'm writing code like a madman. This is
Mm-hmm.
slow because I'm being having to be very ponderous about
Yes.
how this and that works and imagining all these different scenarios. And that's why I'm eager to talk to you, because I'm like, well, I'm trying to imagine enough scenarios that I can sort of place the next foot in front of the other with some confidence. Obviously, I won't think of everything, but that's why I need to hear from you what you've been trying to do and hitting, because that's going to
Yeah.
influence where I think the next thing is. For example, it seems that expectations are always a true or false, and I can't yet see a real use case that I want where I want to have an expectation that's a measurement, like a score between 0 and 100. Can you think of
Um,
something?
you could,
No, I think if you had to think about it, it's not something that's been.
it's not something immediate.
Yeah,
Where scores
and
are would be in testing maybe bots on bots, where it's like, let's run these two bots on different models and then compare the two. In order to compare them to, you get, no, it's still true or false.
it's still a true or false, man. I'm starting to suspect that it's just so.
Well, it's pass fail. That's why it's a true or false. It's, the expectation is that there's going to be a tick or no, not a tick.
Yeah, it seems like this is enough to get an awful long way.
Yeah.
It gets you an awful long way, I think. So why don't we just until you can, if you can try
Well,
and come up.
here's one
Yeah.
potentially expectation on a customer-facing bot is that its tone is formal.
Okay. Why is that not a measure? Why is that not a pass fail?
Because what's the definition of formal? You need
You
to,
would
if
you
it's
you described that the other night. You said you would have to prompt it with examples of what formal is, right? Because
um,
saying it is formal or isn't formal seems much more useful in in the context of running 1,000 generated tests, you will get the equivalent of a measurement out of the statistical true falseness,
Yes.
right?
But when you get to here, say if you get okay, so formal 95% of the time. When it gets to the expectation, then it's converted into a true or false, of course, because it must be because it's a test. It must actually pass or fail. You
Yeah.
can't have a half-failed
Tests,
test.
well, tests are capable of being in numbers. I'm just trying to argue here that because we're rolling the dice multiple times, true or false run 1,000 times gives you a range.
It does, and then
And
with a threshold, you get true or false. So
yeah,
anything you got any kind of number attached to, even if it's a sliding scale, you put a threshold onto it, and you got true or false.
yeah. So and again with your example, I don't like what would I do with that information? Am I trying to increase the score?
Um,
You
well,
know what I mean?
take
Like
that. Say
like
if it
like
was if it's a
it's
little
nice to
bit
think
slow.
about. It's nice to talk
Yeah.
about, but it's like what is the practical ramifications of that scale? And I'm call me boring, but I'm starting to not see it.
Well, if so long as you've seen the expectations, if you defined what a pass is, then you're only ever going to get binary.
hmm
Um,
But
and the
binary
definition,
binary over a lot of trials equals range.
yes, that's true. But then you could still say if you get above 95% probability at 7% assurance, pass. If you get less than that, fail.
Yeah.
So still, you can always convert it to binary, but only if you
No, that's a different thing.
state
That's
the
that's that's
threshold.
putting a gate. That's putting a an acceptance level
Hmm.
in the test, but the actual test specification itself doesn't need to specify a range. It only needs to specify a true or a false, and it just gets run a lot of times.
Yeah,
Anyway, uh,
yeah,
let's
it's
can we
interesting.
just see how far we like you're certainly not asking me for
No,
like I
no,
mean
I'm
are you
trying to
asking
give you
me
examples, counter examples, really. But yeah,
and you had to try
let's start with
hard, right? And they're sort of
yeah,
not even that strong. And well, sorry, that was rude.
no,
Like
no,
the
they
the
weren't
not,
that strong. No, 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 they really weren't.
but
Uh,
it's not that they weren't strong. It's that they weren't that useful afterwards. Anyway, like yes, you could argue that that's a an interesting thing to know. But what am I going to do with that?
yeah, yeah,
And
because
and 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 the real question is, what am I going to do with that I wouldn't be able to detect and do with just the pass fail notion?
um, yeah, I mean, again, I can reach for answers to that one,
Yeah,
but
I'd rather. Yeah, it's
there's
just
nothing that's screaming out that needs
no.
them right now.
So in this test format, can you think of anything that you want different, changed, or altered?
Um, we've got the description. Well, you don't have the description here, but
Not
we've got the
here, but I
description.
got I got a
Yeah,
description here. Like you
right.
can put anything you
So that
want in there.
description. The only thing I was thinking is if each test is to be run unitary um, in a blank canvas, which is spun up for each test, you
Yeah,
might want to put some initial conditions, which would just be a prompt like, you know, there is someone called John Smith with an ID of 15.
that's this clause. You used the
Yeah,
before
that's one. Yeah.
that's covered there. What do
So
you
the
think of
clone,
this as a mechanism?
yeah, cloning repo, but also will be helpful there is don't use a repo for the state. Use a blank state, and I'll tell you what to inject into that just for this test, so you can isolate that test.
But shouldn't you have prompted it up? Like shouldn't you have see here's where all that's happening here is this test is being run and then the state is not being cleared. It's just being frozen, and then the other test continues.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, take that example I gave there. Using a blank canvas, um, add in John Smith ID 14. The prompt is
Yeah, I
what's
think
going
I know
to.
what you're trying to do there, but those are that's a bad practice in my opinion because it's quite brittle. It doesn't tolerate, like, if you go and redesign how IDs work in the
Yeah.
system. See, the principle is you should generate the initial state by doing things that a user would do to generate the initial state. Otherwise, your
Mm.
test has a pretty high chance of breaking later as the design of the ERD mutates over time. Whereas if it was like, add a customer, what is the customer's name? What is the customer's ID? Okay, now move on to
Well,
running this test,
yeah. Yeah.
right?
The only
You should
thing
you
is
should
how.
generally speaking, you should never ever inject raw data into a system to test it because the data's out of date. It's stale. It's
Yeah, it can be generated or inferred. But say if well, this is the topic we're talking about uh, injecting data using the ERD, and we're actually trying to test the ERD. So
oh
if
no, that's fine because what's happened is you have some tests that run beforehand earlier that have tested the ERD, and now you are confident the ERD is okay because all these tests failed. Now you can use the ERD to run higher the next level up of tests.
yeah, okay,
This is a
so
common
well,
thing. This is partly
yeah,
why the blockchains have been a real nightmare to test because I always had to do all these little base tests to make sure the blockchain did. And then it seemed like this huge leap to testing running on the blockchain. And so if I broke something little down there, like the 95% of my tests would die, which was a very
yeah,
disheartening situation until I just sort of got the base layer working again, and then I got the test going up again. So it feels
yeah.
like the same situation.
I think it is. I think it is. I guess given that we can generate the clone
Yeah,
and then clone the repo, the before with that command, I'm assuming it's like forget everything in the past.
yeah,
There's blank sheet of paper,
yeah,
clone the repo, and
yeah.
then run the
Well,
test.
that's the other way of testing that I'm sort of discouraging, but I appreciate it has a place. Is that if you can generate a scenario that you're worried about
Mm-hmm.
and commit it to GitHub, we can pull that in and start the blank canvas at that snapshot every time. But
Yeah.
again, that has the weakness that, like, that's really good for if a customer comes with a very specific problem and you're able to recreate it using their actual data. That's cool, but it is subject to breakage as the formats and things evolve over time. So it's generally a bad idea because it pins you.
It
It
is.
it pins you.
It can be useful for spot
Yeah, it's more spot testing,
problems.
spot testing until you've sort of figured out what was the principle that caused the fault as opposed to this exact instance of the fault. And if you
Yeah.
can pin it long enough to figure out what that is, and then the general problem is what you commit to the permanent
Yeah.
set of tests, right?
Exactly. I don't know whether it's going to be. It's probably going to be prone to this because software usually is. But you get a fault report and you ask steps to recreate the fault. And you run all the steps and you don't get the fault.
That's right. Whereas in
And then you
in
run it a
because of
hundred times,
artifact,
and it's like once you get it, it's like
yeah,
it's useful to like just snapshot that and go right. Okay, I've got it once.
yeah, yeah,
What's going
yeah,
on?
yeah.
Because it only ever happens, on the 14th of
Yeah,
February.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because let's not forget that artifact will have bugs in it that you'd want to capture those too. But
Yeah.
that would be more like a report that would eventually be disassembled into the constituents and a more pure, more
Yeah,
permanent
yeah.
test
But
made.
if the before is basically take a repo and here's your starting state, then the only difference we're talking about is where does the start state come in? You could take a snapshot of a running system. You could generate
Yep,
a new one each time, or you could take a bug report with
yep,
an actual, state that recreates that every
yep,
time.
yep.
And
A
it doesn't really
commit
matter. It's
hash.
still the same code in, a named repo.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a big
And
fan of
those
that. I've been wanting that since forever. Like that's
yeah.
years old. That desire.
Uh, and presumably, if you don't have it before, it's just not going to overwrite from the previous task. So, say if we had two tests that are useful to run one
Mm,
after the other,
mm.
and you don't have it before, then you're just going to use the state that was
No,
at the end of the last test.
no, they're independent. It's a blank slate each time. You need to specify before if you want the state to remain.
Uh, so, say if I wanted what we're calling a test batch, I want you to do this, 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 and then this.
Yeah.
And I want to check at each point. This is what I expect. This is what I expect. This is what I expect.
So
And
you
then at the
do
end of the
like one,
batch,
you do
I want
one prompt and then some expectations, and then the next prompt and then expectations, like that. You mean?
and then expectations for the entire batch of those
Yeah. So how
tests.
that would have to be done, or sorry, how I would do that using this current format, and
Hmm.
I'm pretty keen to get the format to hear changes to the format um, early because it's very weird to me to work in a place where the format isn't, it's not strict, but it should be. So I would say
Yeah.
you'd go step one. This is why I was considering actually simplifying the format. Do the first thing, and then you say that you want some expectations. This would be a lot
Yeah.
easier if a bot did it for me.
I've got one that's 50% doing it at the moment, but it's mostly just too vague. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And
And
then
then I
you
would
wrap
go,
those two steps with an overall expectation. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That'll do. Yep, perfect. Yep,
and
and
then you
then
just ad infinitum, you chain them on like that,
yeah,
and
and
then
then final expectations. You could do that. Maybe it would
final
just snap the
expectations fine
information.
because you'd just end up saying final, and then you just go before, and you'd say step two, for example,
Yep.
and then you'd say the prompts. I guess you'd leave the prompts out, and you'd just go expectations.
Yeah, yeah. Because you don't want to change anything.
No, but so why wouldn't you just add the expect? Oh no, that's fine.
The reason what one is actually step two might be another test that individually works, but let's
Yeah,
test it
that's right.
in
Yeah,
each
you're
time.
right. You're right. So you'd go prompts. Right, and then final does the whole thing, overall expectations of all steps,
Yeah, yeah,
like that,
yeah.
right?
But that works. That works.
Yeah.
Do you want to pass in steps as references to tests, or just put them verbatim?
Sorry?
Like huge. So, for example, step two maybe is a very common test
Yeah.
in multi-step tests.
Right.
So you could just
So
make
if
it verbatim there, or you could just say refer to test
if I
three.
had another multi-step test, that's what you mean?
Yep. Yep.
And you're saying that I want to do like step one, step two, step three, and then I want to call on this original step. This original step two, right?
Yeah. So, well, let's
Yeah,
say if
I
step
think that's
one,
pretty
step
easy because you then go step in, and then you'd call before. Would that work?
it wasn't quite what I was thinking about, because it could reference a test as one of the steps that, and the test has been already defined somewhere else,
Like a
say
macro, you
individually,
mean?
like a macro. Yeah. So if you had another multi-step test, you
Yeah.
say run test one, run test two, run test three,
Oh, so you
and
want
then define the
another
expectations of this.
you want another verb, don't you? You want another uh how would you do that? You might have a verb like invoke, and then that would be where did my helpful little fucking thing go?
Hmm?
Oh, 'cause my network died. Yay. Fun times, fun times.
Yeah, and then
Right? And then
you could.
that's sort of saying that it's not waiting for the test to complete. It's running it right there and then.
Mm,
Maybe? No?
that wasn't what I was meaning, but that sounds very interesting. No, what I was meaning is, say if you define three tests,
Right.
and then you want to have two um, step tests. So the first one is run one and then two, and we expect this to happen. The next step test is run two and three, and we want this to happen. And then possibly we can go further and say run the step test one and then step test two, which should have the effect of running one, two, two, three, and then you want this to happen. So you could explode it because text is cheap.
Yeah, but it is
That's
better to reuse. So,
yeah.
look, why don't we, why don't we wait until we got a concrete example or concrete need of that, and then
Mm-hmm.
after we've done this before block and got some actual tests down, then I think we'll have a better idea on how that type of activity needs to work.
Yeah. Okay.
What I told the trucking guys is that we now need to take all of the pieces that we made for Hammer that are hand prompted, and we need to
Mm-hmm.
convert them into. We need to get test coverage for all of those base components. And I think if we
Mm-hmm.
stabilize our system, and that includes like base coverage for the summoner, for the switchboard, for all the pieces that make up the baseline of Hammer,
Mm-hmm.
so that from here on in, the system should never get worse. It'll only get better. That's really
Mm-hmm.
the thing we're getting at. Because right now we're adding bits in and it gets horribly worse, and then it changes, or they say they want something, we do it, and then we change this other thing, and it eclipses
Yeah.
the previous work. That's like children coding is where we're at during
Yeah.
our experimental phase, and now we can transition to this test suite, and we can actually lock the system down and be like deliverable.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. We'll probably need more business rules on though, because the business rules
Sure,
Uh,
sure. But the
yes,
business rules will come from feedback, and one of the key metrics we need to start taking note of is when we show them something, they say, "Oh, it needs to do this, needs to do that, needs to do that." How long is it from them telling us a change to us delivering a thoroughly tested, measurably assured feature change? That's
yeah,
basically the money printer for us. If we can
yeah,
demonstrate that that
absolutely.
loop is
Yeah,
tight,
absolutely.
then
I'm still thinking
anyone
about
with a
the
brain would see that as
yeah.
a magnificent thing.
I'm still thinking about the base because the base is sure it works, uh, but it works coherently. I'm thinking it must be more to it. Maybe there's not more to it. What I was thinking is I don't know. We can ask them for an obfuscated copy of each of the job type specs that they've got. So
I think that's asking for pain because those job specs come with baggage from a
yeah,
traditional system. I think it's more engaging for them and for us to be building it up dynamically, is my opinion,
yeah, okay,
because we need to. They've been starved of progress for so long that it should give them good confidence to be able to chat with us and say how they want something to be different. Whereas if we ask them for the business rules, you're inviting a situation of we go off into the hills and they have to
yeah,
wait
no,
some more.
that's fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to get that base a bit more richer, but sure,
It it
we've got what
it's
we got. We can build it.
its fault
Yeah,
is not its lack of richness. Its fault is its lack of stability and permanent storage. We have not yet moved into having permanent record keeping, and I mean, I'm trying. I just don't. It's it's weird. I don't know where it's stalling.
mm.
I don't know. I don't know where our effort is stalling because we're not at storage on disk yet. Now I'm building this test suite, and I'm like, well, at what point can I build a test that tests that the files were written to the disk?
Yeah. Well, how do you write the test as we've got? So, for example, we're recalling a repo. We're not in. Um, I'm assuming that's going to be a file uh, that we pull in, and it says, right, okay, so now consider this for this test.
Yeah,
So that file is not going to be written by the test. It's going to be written by a generator of,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. I
test
was
data.
tempted to also update that file with the test results, but now I think the best thing is to never touch those test files.
Oh
I
yeah,
will
yeah,
write the run files to a different file.
yeah, yeah. So even with just that step, then I was saying the other day, actually a lot of the other stuff I could just with one bot say right, and in the system prompt, once you get here, write it to disk, and then have another bot. Even if that first bot doesn't kick it off, even just pulling up another bot saying, right, go to this file, and here's what you got to do with it. That would be a major step forward.
Say that one more time, please.
So have one bot generate some information, and at the end of the process in the system prompt, you do these steps. The last thing you do is write it to a file here, and then done. Spin up another bot and say the first thing you do is take in this file. And ideally, you want to be able to get the first bot to tell the bot, I've written the file, over to you, matey. Go for it. That would solve a hell of a lot of the stuff that I currently am cutting and pasting for. So, an example, let's generate some test data. So, you create a bot that would generate the prompts for these tests. It's like, okay, let's write those to disk. The other one generates a repo state. Write that to disk. Then you have the runner saying, run these tests on this state, and here's your ERD that you're testing. Go for it. That would be really, really helpful. Just being able to stash a file is the first thing. And the second thing is get one bot to say, I've stashed this file. Well, you're next. Go for it. Just those two steps, I think, is all we need for this.
When you say all you need for this, it's all you need to be able to generate these test files using a bot and then run them. Is that right?
Yeah. Basically, anytime I need to open up a new tab, or anytime I need to cut and paste anything, that needs to be in the system. Or once it's in the system, I don't have to open it up in another new tab. Put in the system prompt, go back to the previous one, cut and paste across, which is quite a lot. Well, we saw in the video that I sent over, there's quite a lot of cutting and pasting across and then between tabs, and then creating a new bot, spinning that up, cut paste the results of one into the start of the other. If we do that, then that'll be pretty ballsy, actually. We'll get quite far just on those two things.
We have that. Let me just check that I understood. The fuck is that? Okay. Okay, so now so I want to, this is the example that you're talking about, is you want to write a new agent and then you want to run it. Is that correct?
Not in the sense of the tests. What I'd want to do is to create the tests, create the test states.
Okay, so tell me what you would want to type now.
So where are we? So it's like by chat. I want to create some tests for Hammer, and you go into the test creator.
This is what I needed from you. Hold on a second. Let me just, oh my goodness, what did I do? I just need to fix my networking issue.
Mm-hmm.
What I needed from you.
Yep. Just next. It's dude. Hello. We're streaming at the moment. Hello. Okay. All right.
What is if the scenario you were about to describe to me could be described as a test, what would it be called?
It's the I don't know what to call it.
This workflow you're about to engage in, what is it for?
It's a
It's to
handover.
it's to
It's a
make
handover.
tests. Is it the test maker, or is it
Um,
really
well,
about creating a bot?
yeah, it's not about creating a bot. Let's make it real simple. Say if there's a bot that exists that creates a haiku, and there's another one that gives the haiku a score out of 10. So the actual thing that I'm talking about is the haiku generator creates a haiku, stashes that in disk, and then tells the haiku critic where it stashed it and give it a score. So it's a kind of a handover of from one agent to another. I've finished my bit. I've stashed this.
So
You do
this
your
is
bit.
testing handover.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yep. Yep. That's it.
I need like a little. I need things, like a little hourglass object that I could put it on the desk to show I'm thinking,
Mm.
or yeah. Hmm. It's an interesting problem because you're asking to test two targets at once. I'd only considered testing a single target at a time, and so I need a way to stitch those two bots together in a system, almost like using a switchboard,
Mm.
where the switchboard can only be one or the other. So what I'll do then is I'll make a fictitious agent. This will be You'll be talking to the haiku generator,
Mm-hmm.
and then you'll say, "Hey, switchboard, I want to talk to the assessor," and then the switchboard will flick you into the assessor agent, and then you'll talk like that. Is that acceptable?
Yeah. Yep.
Are you sure that's not taking some shortcuts that invalidate the essence of the test that you want to
Um,
show?
the only thing that it doesn't prove is the second part. So using the switchboard as a user, then I'd be talking to haiku generating bot. It would generate haiku, and then going right, okay, store that, and then store that, and I'd say to switchboard, right, that last haiku, pass it over to the haiku assessor for assessment. Now, the only thing that's shortcutting is it would be good if the whole thing was black boxed, and say if I was talking to a third bot, which was Haiku Master, and I say, okay, so Haiku Master, generate haiku on this topic. It kicks off the generator, and then the generator knows its next thing it does is send it off to the assessor, and the assessor comes back with the number, for example. So it's that automatic passing on of the chain without the user stepping in. Now,
Right.
the
So do
reason
you
it's not
care?
strictly necessary.
Do you care about it
Sorry.
being a file at that point, or is it okay to pass it in context?
It's okay to pass it in context.
But then that's
Files would be
different.
better.
You're asking for a switchboard to be Haiku Master, and it is programmed to know how to engage a certain task, whereby it's like it knows about Haiku, generates Haiku, then it knows that as soon as it's generated something, the very next thing it's going to do is call the assessor. When the assessor comes back, if it's a bad number, it's going to run again. Is that right?
Yes, but the writing to the disk. The reason I was saying that is it's helpful for the persistence of it. Say I do this once a day, and then might want to say, well, Haiku Master, give me a list of all the scores of all the haikus.
But you could get that out of the thread because the thread is in disk.
So if we take this, essentially that example is like running the tests, right? So you create the tests. You might want to run the tests multiple times, cleanly each time, without incurring any kind of leakage from a previous test, which means a new thread. So it's like, okay, so we're starting again. Here are the tests. Those tests are in the file. But you still have the same thing. It's like, I want to be able to go to an agent and tell it to read a file and then go from there. And ideally, what I want to do is to have, say, an orchestrator, a test orchestrator, says, right, okay, forget anything that's happened before. I want to run a complete set of tests. And it goes through test generation, creates tests. Those tests are handed off.
This is getting complicated.
Etc.
What is the specific relation to our goals to make the CRM? Like, I feel like this Haiku example is, I don't see the connection, and if you could show me the connection, it might make more sense to me.
Sure. It's right. So, say if onboarding a customer involves talking to the customer agent to get the name, address, preferences, that sort of thing. The customer agent has permissions to do that, and then that's in one long thread. But me as a user, I'm just the customer agent. Another user with a different long thread is the duty manager, who is the next one in the onboarding. Reads, okay, so we've got a partially completed customer here. I need to put them into a delivery schedule. Okay, can move stuff around, done that. But those two aren't necessarily the same person or the same thread at all.
So the essence that you want to get at is to be able to drive two different agents doing different things that have been switched out as part of the story arc of what's happening, right?
Yeah, exactly. And hand that over. Now I know we can do it in a long thread, but
you'd rather, what you really want to test is the inbox functionality of the duty manager to receive a notification one way or another, and then pick up data from out of context into context, process it, and then send it back.
Yep. Or just write that back, and then message. It might be a different customer agent completely, saying, "All right,
let's just focus on a real simple one because we're almost getting somewhere. Is that right?
Yep.
Are you sure there's not something missing?
Yep.
All right,
Can we
so
do
this
that?
is this is this is really what I wanted from you is these kinds of scenarios. If you can tell me what is the scenario that you want the most, first of all, give me a bunch of them. Second of all, tell me the one you want the most, because I'm sort of stalled as to like I'm struggling to figure out what is the next deliverable for you to use when I'm like, there's all these things that I could do, and I can't see which is the most wanted.
Yeah. Well,
But
this
if you
is
can express your needs in these test files, then we can do something about it.
okay. Well, let's. I can handcraft an actual test format for this, and might need to make up,
Can we do that together if you got
some.
time here? I got about another 20 minutes, or you got to go.
Yeah, yeah. No, no. I'm good.
Okay, so can I delete the Haiku thing? Because I found that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and the target is going to be what? It's no longer an agent under test. It's more like the whole system now, right?
Yeah. What did you call it?
It's end to
I called it a
end.
virtual. Yeah, I called it a virtual bot the other day, but we came up with another name.
Well,
Compound. I think it was
it's a
compound.
compound agent, yeah, but then that shouldn't be weird, like testing, because uh Hammer has a switchboard. So I think it's actually called Hammer switchboard because
Mm-hmm.
it's the long thread operator that can switch agents in and out on for Hammer doing Hammer things,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
Okay, so I think I can see how I would make my first test, which is to set up a new customer. Oh, this is fun. How do I specify? Like that, right?
Yep. You might want to add. She wants to have a weekly pickup on Tuesdays. So what we'd expect from that is that a customer named Janice is created, and that you've been refused permission to set up a pickup because that's the duty manager's job. You can't do that because that messes with schedules.
So what's the expectations?
There's a customer called Janice Joplin with those details, and that you refuse permission to create a pickup.
We don't want to say that. That's not what we expect. We expect that a message.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. And then what? Then I want to go. what's the duty manager's job again?
He's in charge of scheduling and
Routing. So I'd say
routing.
it's so you almost want another thing that says uh who am I? And then you want to say I am the duty manager.
Mm-hmm.
Like how would I become the duty manager within this test environment? Like how do I say that I am, right?
I've been kind of frigging that by saying part of the start of the prompt, saying I am the super admin and I can change roles. I'll tell you my name each time I do that. When I want to switch roles, I will say super admin, change me to this role, and enforce all permissions for the role I have at that point.
Okay, so for the test, I would maybe I
That's
don't
frigging
need
it in thread though. That's the thing. That's in
what's it?
session. That's in
Yeah,
session. That's frigging in session.
frigging it. Yeah, so I'll think more about that, but it sounds like there's either a who am I, uh, I think
Yeah,
that's a verb.
it's a user story. It's as the customer agent, I enter the customer details to create a new customer. So
Right,
it's that
but it
as
could
part of that.
also be done, yeah, it's the as a part, yeah. It could also be done as a prompt where I'm like, if every test starts as the super user, I would be like, become or something like that, right?
Mm. Yeah,
So I could say that by default the test runs as super user or admin, and it's up to the test to scope itself down to the correct position, right? Because another way to look at that is to say, um, become customer agent, and I say that just as a prompt. And then up here, I say like that.
yeah. So when they say become customer agent, what's it doing there?
Under here, it's running that prompt. It's assuming that we start as the super user. We run the prompt to create a customer agent named Sam and then become that customer agent. So the
Mm-hmm.
super user would presumably have the ability to become other users, but other users would not have the ability to become the super user.
Yeah, and then if I was to later on say become the duty manager, um, that's still going to be in the same thread, isn't it?
No, no, not at all. So I can say become the duty manager.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then over here, the issue is keeping the state because you need this state to flow through, right?
Yeah.
Man, this is a curly one. Okay, but basically,
It's going to unlock a lot.
yeah. Okay, so that's one. This scenario is correct, right? That's pretty simple,
Yeah,
I think. Like it's pretty clear what you want. You're trying to impersonate two different roles, doing something and creating information in between, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
collaborating on one task.
Okay, and then I got another one for you that would be uh, customer agents sharing data. So when two customer agents create update two different customer records, each one can see the new records. Right, that's a valid thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then we can go in here. Resolution.
Yeah. That's what we're talking about already.
All right, we're getting somewhere. This is the stuff. This is the stuff. So if we can build out the expectations of the system in terms of these scenarios and then the step-by-step expectations, this is what I need to be able
This
to.
is a good angle. I like this.
Yeah, because this is what I need to be able to figure out what has to happen in Artifact to make that possible, to make sure I got all the features that we need, and then also to experiment with things like how does the data synchronizing work and all these other things. Like this is 100% what I need. So in terms of what you want for the tooling you need, I need to see it in this kind of a scenario. Like even if it was a scenario like I want to create an agent and then I want to run the agent and then I want to, like I need it in that format to understand.
All right. I can just do this by hand. It'd be quicker doing it by hand.
Okay, great.
And
That's what I wanted.
yeah,
That's what I wanted
yeah,
because like if it isn't quicker by hand, then it's not pure information. It's amplified information, but I need the
yeah.
pure information. I don't think you can do this faster in a bot.
No, definitely not. You could seed it. Oh, maybe
You
try
could
that
walk you
after that.
through the questions and teach you the process, and it can do all that, but this is genuine value input from a human because no bot is going to be able to generate that, right?
Yeah,
That's
you can't
right.
bootstrap that from an ERD. Yeah,
No matter how smart the AI is, it can't generate that requirement. That's a human thing.
yeah, yeah. Good. All right.
Cool. Okay, I'll commit that so that you can see it, and then
Handover test. Got it. Yeah.
I'll send it over. Yeah.
Nice. Right.
Sweet.
Better have
You
that
better
ready.
run, hey?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
buddy.
Cool.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful. That was exactly what I need. I need more of that. Give me more of that.
Grant.
Even if
Right.
you don't know how to specify the prompt sequence, so long as you can tell me the scenario that you want a test generated for, I can
Yeah.
work with that.
Yeah. Or I can add comments if there's just stubs to be put in.
Well, hey, it's just pure
Yeah.
markdown, so it's all good,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. All right.
Cool.
Nice one.
Okay.
Okay. That's what we did today.
I'll see you
Peace,
tomorrow.
man. No. Hey, you left me
Oh,
hanging.
oh, wait, sorry. Oh,
Oh,
that
you
was
can't do that. You just gotta do that. Yeah, that was a bit shit.
So you can't fist bump.
You can't fist bump us. Oh, you can. Oh, yeah.
Why did it need? Does it need a? So if I come here and then
Yeah.
Oh, it didn't work
I
before.
think so. Oh, it must have just been a bit off. Okay. Some angle of attack of a fist, maybe. Yeah.
It's got to be precise, I think.
Interesting. Anyway.
Funny. All right. I'll see you later.
And yet completely useless.
Oh, wait,
Right.
one more thing. Very quickly.
Yeah. Oh, I've not really been checking into these guys recently.
They made a big deal.
Oh, about simplification, removing bits.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look at that. It just screams complexity, failure, less and less. It's beautiful, that thing, actually. The Raptor 3 is beautiful, isn't it?
But why? Where did all the bits go?
Well, I realised that they didn't need them, I guess.
Well, you don't make, like, they got less bits here, and now they got no bits, and I'm like, what? How?
Maybe it's gas exchange inside, because, you know, they need that supercharger.
But there's the supercharger. There's the supercharger.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that to your attention because I'm like, that's amazing. But yeah,
I'm big fans.
That's that. Okay, I'll let you go.
Done there. All right. See you, man.
See you later. Bye.